Number 10.
There are about 2,500 species of snake in the world, and not one of them is vegetarian. They're all killers, but only a few can hurt a human. We're counting down the 10 snakes that you'd least like to meet because they found extremely unpleasant ways of making a killing. Our first contender lives in the wetlands of South America and is a giant that hunts using power and stealth. Growing to almost 28 feet long and weighing up to 450 pounds, the anaconda is the largest snake on Earth. It uses water to support its massive bulk. This giant snake could easily kill a human, but there's no firm proof that it ever has, only legend and rumor. It's easy to see why people are afraid of this monster. It lies in wait at the water's edge, waiting for prey to enter its strike range. A snake can strike with up to 1/3 of its body length, giving a full-grown anaconda a deadly reach of more than 9 feet. The anaconda doesn't kill with venom. It's a constrictor that crushes the life out of its victims instead. When you fall prey to an anaconda, you don't die from suffocation. What kills you is high blood pressure. The snake's deadly embrace is so powerful that it causes the blood vessels in your heart and brain to rupture. There's not a single living animal in South America that can survive the anaconda's coils. Even a cousin of the alligator isn't safe. A black caiman is about the largest thing an anaconda can swallow in a single gulp. Like all snakes, the anaconda has an extremely flexible jaw that can stretch to accommodate prey several times its size. Imagine if you could eat like an anaconda. All you'd need is one big meal that you'd swallow in a single bite. You'd slowly work it down to your stomach. And then it would be time for a nap while you digest your dinner. You'd need to find a place to rest, undisturbed, for 4 or 5 weeks. If you had table manners like a giant snake, you'd probably find yourself living alone. Which is exactly how the anaconda likes it. An animal this big needs lots of space to make sure there's always plenty of food around. But the question is, can the anaconda kill a human? The answer is almost certainly yes. Even the anaconda's smaller cousins have tried to squeeze the life out of us. This Australian boy recently had a close encounter with a hungry 12-foot python.
I woke up and it was wrapped around my neck.
The snake had crawled into the family's tent at a campsite in Queensland.
I was pushing it away as hard as I can, and it was when it started to wrap around my neck, Daddy started pulling.
Jared was fighting the snake off, and my husband had one end and Jared had the other end, and my husband then managed to get 2 hands onto it and pull it off.
Well, its head was as big as my hand, and when I grabbed it, my hand was like that.
Both Jared and the snake were lucky to survive the experience. The family went home, leaving the snake to hopefully hunt smaller targets. The anaconda is such a formidable predator that it could easily crush the life out of a human. But it's not a convicted killer, which is why it's only number 10 in our countdown of the most dangerous snakes on the planet. Our next contender may be one of the smallest snakes in the countdown, but even so, it's thousands of times more deadly than an anaconda.
Number 9.
People across Africa and Asia are all too aware of our next contender. Usually, it spends its day buried in the sand with just its eyes showing. But when it's threatened, it gives intruders a warning to back off by rubbing its scales together. This noise is why the snake at number 9 in the countdown is called the saw-scaled viper. It's a tiny snake, growing little more than 2 feet long. But what the saw-scaled viper lacks in size, it makes up for in temper. It will strike at the slightest provocation. The saw-scaled viper kills more people in Africa than all other snakes combined. That's because most snakes only use venom 10% of the time. They conserve it for when it's really needed. Compare that to the saw-scaled viper, which injects its venom more than 80% of the time. But this nasty snake only makes it to number 9 in the countdown, because even without medical treatment, only 10% of people bitten by the saw-scaled viper will die. Its venom is not as potent as some of its more infamous cousins. Get bitten by some snakes, and you're far more likely to die, unless you take some very unusual precautions. Back in the 1940s, Miami snake handler Bill Haas wanted to demonstrate that it's possible to build up an immunity to snake venom. That's why he started injecting himself with small quantities of cobra venom each day. At first, it made him sick, but over time, Bill's body became used to the poison. It wasn't until 1956 that he was actually bitten by a cobra. But because his body had built up an immunity, he survived. Almost 50 years later, Bill's still going strong.
In my lifetime now, I've been bitten 163 times. And with the exception of about 6 bites, all were on the hands. And they're all sort of disfigured and very difficult to use, but I still go on with them. This one is just recovering from a snake bite, a large diamondback, just last Saturday, a few days ago. You see, I can't bend my wrist any more than that.
Luckily, if you're bitten by a saw-scaled viper, you have a 90% chance of survival. But because this aggressive snake lives in populated areas where people often walk around with bare feet, more than 2,000 people a year are killed by this tiny terror.
If you thought the first 2 contenders were dangerous, step back from the screen, because coming up is a snake that likes biting young American men. And later, what snake has been described as the atom bomb of the rodent world? Find out next on Animal Planet's The... Number 8.
Coming in at number 8 in the countdown is a snake that's twice as deadly as the saw-scaled viper, capable of killing 20% of the people it bites.
Rattlers, striking soon.
The rattlesnake is one of the heaviest of the venomous snakes, usually weighing about 15 pounds and growing 6 feet long. The heaviest on record weighed 34 pounds and was almost 8 feet long. Rattlesnakes are pit vipers, so called because they have a pit under each eye that carries a thermal imaging system. Rather than rely upon their eyes and very strong sense of smell, rattlesnakes hunt at night. Using their thermal detectors, they can locate prey by its heat signature. Rattlesnakes can be found almost anywhere in North America and prefer to live off smaller rodents such as rats and mice. What makes them dangerous to us is that people just can't leave rattlesnakes alone. Although rattlesnakes are protected by law, hundreds, possibly thousands, are caught every year. But catching rattlesnakes is still the most surefire way to get bitten by one. Statistics show that your average rattlesnake victim is usually drunk, under the age of 30, and male. The fact that 65% of rattlesnake bites occur on the hands or fingers suggests that rattlesnake victims were handling the snake when it bit them. At least the rattlesnake tries to warn people off. Not all snakes are so considerate. Our next contender uses its tail not as a warning, but as a deadly lure.
So far, we've seen rattlers shaking their tails and vipers rubbing their scales. But still to come is a snake that's revered as a living god. And later, what's the connection between deadly snakes and a horse called Silverado? Find out next on Animal Planet's The Most Extreme. Number 7.
Crawling in to number 7 in our countdown of deadly serpents is a snake that packs enough punch to kill 9 men with a single bite. Instead of hunting for a meal, the Australian death adder lets other animals hunt it, or rather its tail. By wriggling its tail like a worm, the death adder can draw its victims in close until they're within strike range. And then it attacks with fangs that can grow to almost half an inch long. The death adder's hunting technique is one of the reasons it's so dangerous. Unlike most snakes, the death adder won't necessarily retreat from approaching humans. That's why it can be easily disturbed by the unwary. The snake will strike almost automatically at anything that gets within strike range.
Oh! Gee! Oh my God, you've been bitten.
The death adder injects venom in 60% of strikes, 6 times more than most snakes. Even with a correctly applied pressure bandage, the neurotoxins in the death adder's venom will still go to work attacking your nerves. If left untreated, the paralysis can spread and cause death from a complete respiratory shutdown in as little as 6 hours. So what do you do when you come face to face with a dangerous snake? In Sydney, Australia, It's such a common occurrence that homeowners now have experts they can call.
Hello, Peter speaking.
Peter Buckley
yep,
is the reptile coordinator for Sydney Wildlife Rescue, a company that specializes in removing dangerous animals from suburban homes. He can get as many as 50 calls a week asking him to capture deadly snakes. The secret to capturing a dangerous reptile is timing.
When we pick up the snake, you've got a split second where the snake doesn't know what's going on and you're totally in charge, but it's only a split second.
It sounds easy, but do not try this. Peter's a trained professional.
Okay, and there's your snake. Don't go out and try and catch it. Don't kill it. 95% of snake bites are people actually trying to interact with the snake.
All the snakes that Peter catches get a second chance. He simply relocates them to a more suitable environment. After all, it's not the snake's fault, it's ours and our growing cities.
We're encroaching upon their territory. They don't sort of fit well with human population. People are scared of them, and quite literally the snakes are scared of people as well. The reason they'll bite you is because they feel threatened.
We feel threatened by the death adder because without quick medical treatment, we only have a 50% chance of surviving its bite. But if you're attacked by the next snake in the countdown, no amount of medicine can save you.
Number 6.
It's easy to see how this snake fought its way into number 6 in the countdown. The reticulated python is found throughout most of Southeast Asia, from Vietnam to Indonesia. It's a killer famous for its size, strength, speed, and aggression. The jungles it lives in are so dense that it's rarely seen, and its camouflage is so good that only the sharpest eyes will be aware that it's come out to hunt. And if you're one of the animals it preys on, like these crested black macaques, then it pays to notice. The reticulated python is number 6 in the countdown because macaques are not the only primates it eats. This constrictor can catch and kill just about anything it wants, including human beings. The reticulated python is a legendary killer for 2 reasons. It's extremely aggressive, and it's the longest snake on Earth. The reticulated python can grow to more than 32 feet and weigh 300 pounds. And unlike the heavier anaconda, this snake is extremely agile and fast. When disturbed, it responds with a vicious combination of teeth and coil. Even though it's a very capable killer, the reticulated python only needs to eat a little more than its own weight in food every year. But that still equates to more than 150 baby macaques. While the macaques have a healthy respect for this massive snake, one Sumatran hill tribe has built a religion around a giant reticulated python. Several years ago, word leaked out that a remote Sumatran tribe known as the Kubu were worshipping a 49-foot-long reticulated python they'd named Fragrant Flowers. If the rumors were true, it was the longest snake ever seen by humans. a local zookeeper decided he wanted that snake. After a year of negotiations, it was handed over to the zoo. But things didn't quite add up, because when Fragrant Flowers was measured by news reporters, they found he was only 23 feet long. Fragrant Flowers was not even remotely close to being the world's longest snake. But who's fooling who? Some believe that since Fragrant Flowers is a spiritual ruler, he can change his size and shape. But it's more likely that the Kubu Hill tribe weren't about to hand over their spiritual ruler to a zookeeper. They negotiated for a year while they tracked down the longest python they could find. And somewhere up in the Sumatran hills, they're still worshiping their 49-foot reticulated python god. The reticulated python has killed humans, though adults may be too big to easily swallow. So while it's not really a man-eater, it's still a killer.
You'd have to be crazy to monkey around with our last two contenders. But still to come is a snake that can kill 50 men with a single bite. And later, what's the fastest thing on no legs? Find out next on Animal Planet's The... Number 5.
The next snake in our countdown of deadly serpents has killed more people in Australia than any other snake. It packs enough poison in a single bite to kill more than 50 people. The tiger snake can grow to 6 feet long and is known for its aggressive display, flattening its head like a cobra and hissing loudly. The most dangerous of the tiger snakes are found on a small, uninhabited island 120 miles south of the Australian mainland. The Chapel Island tiger snake spends its days living off the mutton birds that inhabit the island's many burrows. After a long winter of fasting, the tigers come out in spring with an empty belly. The nesting mutton birds make an excellent first meal. But adult mutton birds have a wingspan of 3 feet. They're too big for the tiger snake to eat. So it first kills the mother and then moves on to its real target, the hatchlings. With hundreds of tiger snakes looking for a meal during the spring, Chapel Island becomes for a few weeks the most dangerous place in the world for both chicks and humans. But if we're bitten, we have a much better chance of survival, thanks to the people who develop antivenom. On the front lines of the fight against snakebite are people like Craig Adams from the Australian Reptile Park. He milks poisonous snakes for their venom. Step 1 is the snake. You need to catch one without getting bitten. Step 2 is to get your laboratory ready for a visit from an angry and dangerous snake.
Australia's got a lot of snakes, and there's about 2,500 bites, reported bites every year. But believe it or not, only one of those ends up being fatal. Now the reason for that is this program here. If we didn't have it, if we didn't produce antivenom, we'd probably lose up to 300 lives a year from snake bite, and that's a lot. So it's a really critical, important process. It obviously has its dangers. They're going to want to bite you, and if they want to bite you, then that's when you get the venom. I think he does want to bite me somehow. He's obviously raring to go. watch your tail, mate. You don't want to bite that too. There you go. Now that's a good load of venom there. There it goes again. So people often think when you milk a snake that it doesn't have any more venom, but that should show you there that he's quite capable of biting a second and a third time. All right. Well, thanks very much for your contribution to the venom program. I'll put him away. Whew. I'm glad they're not all like that. So that's not a bad yield. He's going to prove to be a good milker, and over time that guy's going to save lives. It's a bit of a nasty, dangerous job, but it really has to be done.
The tiger snake is the most common venomous snake in Australia, but it's trapped on the island continent. The next snake in our countdown was once Australian, but 50 million years ago it decided to go for a swim.
Number 4.
Swimming in to number 4 in the countdown are the sea snakes. They are some of the most poisonous serpents on the planet. They can be found in the warm waters of the Pacific Ocean and mostly live off fish. In the years since they went to sea, these snakes have become perfectly adapted to marine life. Their tails have flattened to act like rudders in the water. Their lungs have lengthened to let them carry more air during their dives. They can dive to depths of 300 feet and can stay down for as long as 5 hours. Some sea snakes can also absorb air through their skin directly from seawater. The olive sea snake gets almost a quarter of its air through its skin. But it's this snake's venom that puts it in the record books. The venom glands of the olive sea snake carry enough venom to kill as many as 60 men. If you get bitten by a sea snake, then a horse named Silverado may be your only hope. Around the world, a select group of strong-hearted horses carry the key to surviving a snake bite in their blood. By giving these horses regular small doses of a particular snake's venom, they ultimately become immune to it. We can then use their blood to make the anti-venom that saves us after a snake bite. The horses live in luxury, and sea snake anti-venom is rarely needed, so just one horse can provide the world's supply, and that's Silverado, who lives in Melbourne, Australia. The sea snake's adaptations have made it incredibly fast in the water, but the trade-off is that it's now not very fast on land, unlike our next contender, which is recognized as the fastest snake on the planet.
It seems there's no place to hide from the world's deadliest snakes. And after the break, we'll see that even their babies have an appetite for destruction. And later, what's the king of all killer snakes? Discover that there are plenty more snakes to die for on Animal Planet's The Most. Number 3.
Everyone's afraid of the next serpent in our countdown of deadly snakes.
You scream.
Golly, It's a mamba.
Mariki Walesu, in shadow of death. One bite from mamba, death come quick.
Tarzan knew what he was talking about. The infamous black mamba of southern Africa really is called the shadow of death. It's so aggressive that it can appear out of nowhere to unleash a devastating attack and then disappear just as quickly. That's because the black mamba is the fastest snake on the planet. In short bursts, it can reach up to 14 miles per hour. And what's even scarier is that it's one of the only snakes in the world that's willing to seek out and attack humans. Get within 75 feet of a black mamba, and you could be in big trouble. It doesn't take much to make a black mamba nervous, even though it's one of the world's largest venomous snakes, growing up to 12 feet long. The black mamba is number 3 in the countdown because it will protect its territory from any intruders. More than 100 people a year fall victim to the black mamba simply because they got too close. If this snake catches you with a bite, it will very likely kill you. The venom from each bite is enough to kill 10 men. And the mamba doesn't just strike once. It's capable of hitting up to a dozen times in a row, injecting more venom each time. The snake gains nothing by killing humans. It's just that their presence was a threat. All black mambas want to do is to protect their territory. But they're not the only snakes that are on guard duty. In Indonesia, people are planning to use cobras as a tool to quell rioting crowds. The Bekasi police station ultimately plans to deputize 24 cobras. Lieutenant Colonel Alex Riet Mojo, who is an FBI graduate and holds a PhD in criminology, says that in the future, his officers will be able to use their pet cobras to scare off violent rioters. But not even the Indonesian police would employ black mambas. Their venom is almost 100% fatal without prompt medical treatment. Even so, they can't compete with our next contender, which has the most vicious venom of any land snake on the planet.
Number 2.
There's a snake with venom so powerful that it's been nicknamed the atom bomb of the rodent world because it can kill 250,000 mice with a single bite. Sliding in to number 2 in the countdown of the world's deadliest snakes is the taipan. The taipan is another of Australia's poisonous predators, but this one sits at the top of the pack with the power to kill 125 men. It can grow to more than 6 feet in length and is generally shy, preferring to escape from trouble. But if cornered, it will retaliate with the deadliest of attacks. The taipan's favorite food is the rat, which it can dispatch in seconds. Baby taipans are even more deadly than the adults, because where adults have learned to use just enough venom to kill their victim, babies tend to use all their venom in a single bite. But why should a snake need enough venom to kill 250,000 mice in a single bite when it only needs one for a meal? The answer is that snake venom is also an important aid in pre-digesting their prey, as it breaks down muscle tissue. Another compound in their venom causes extreme agony. Pain is caused by electrical signals that trigger the pain centers in our brain and warn us of injury. Chemical compounds within snake venom attack these pain centers directly, causing excruciating agony. Researchers are hoping to locate the pathways used by snake venom so that one day they may be able to create the perfect painkiller. By injecting frozen spinal columns with snake venom and tracking its movements from one nerve cell to another, scientists are building up a roadmap that will lead us straight to the heart of pain. With that roadmap, they'll be able to create new medicines that treat our pain centers directly without any of the side effects, such as addiction, that are associated with today's painkillers. The taipan's venom may be 50 times more toxic than the #1 snake in our countdown, but in comparison, the taipan is positively harmless.
We've seen the 9 contenders. They're the best of the best. Only one animal is a more extreme killing machine. It's #1, and it's coming up next on Animal Planet's The Most. #1.
The world's most extreme snake has struck again.
I'm afraid he's dead. My God, look. I can't believe it.
It is hard to believe that more than 10,000 people every year are killed by the snake coming in at #1 in the countdown, the cobra. There are dozens of types of cobra, and they can be found across Africa and Asia. But the ruler of them all is the king cobra, the largest venomous snake in the world, growing up to 18 feet long. King cobras are cannibalistic and prefer to eat other snakes. But they will also hunt rats and mice, which brings them into contact with humans. While the cobra's venom isn't as potent as some, it makes up for it in quantity. It can inject more than 6 teaspoons worth in a single bite. That's 10 times more than most snakes. Cobras are also the only snakes that watch over their young. Both parents will diligently guard their young as they grow. Intruders risk being attacked by 2 snakes rather than 1. But despite their fearsome power, not everybody perceives snakes as bad or dangerous. In the northern Transvaal of South Africa, the young women of the Venda tribe will link arms and recreate the movement of the python in a dance. They're hoping to imbue themselves with the snake's fertility. They even believe that a small python lives within each of them. If you want to see a real act of faith, then what about competition cobra kissing? In Malaysia, kissing cobras on the head has become a competitive sport. Thousands of people turn out to watch professional and amateur cobra kissers fight it out for a $1,000 prize. They're always just one step away from the kiss of death. It's also an opportunity for people who are scared of snakes to get a little closer to them.
The principal objective was to overcome the fear of snakes, basically. so that it's an exercise in trying to develop a relationship where you're not frightened of the natural resources of the country, that's all.
Perhaps we should all give the cobras a little kiss. To many, they're the cold and silent stuff of nightmares. But no matter how deadly they are, cobras kill our worst natural enemies, the rats and mice that carry diseases far more deadly than any snake. In that way, cobras save many more people than they kill. It's when humans try to kill them that cobras become dangerous, because cobras can stand up for themselves. And that's why, when it comes to deadly snakes, the cobra really is the most extreme.